Okay, what would you want your story to be about today?
About a microphone that was in the shape of a cannon.
A microphone in the shape of a cannon.
Yes. I can just imagine it in my
Okay.
head.
Okay, let me think. Mhm, 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 mhm. This is the story of Jeremiah Samuel. Jeremiah Samuel was a scientist and he lived hundreds of years ago. Now, Jeremiah Samuel always insisted that there were aliens living on the moon. Of course, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, we did not have the technology that we have today. And even though there's people that say that there are alien civilizations living on the far side of the moon, the side that we don't see, and in fact, there's a lot of uh, interesting evidence that would suggest that. Nonetheless, hundreds of years ago, there was basically no evidence whatsoever and no reason to think that there would be aliens, but there weren't telescopes powerful enough to confirm that there were not aliens in the moon either way. So Jeremiah, anyways, was convinced that there were aliens, but um, he didn't know how to prove it. And because there were no telescopes at the time, he thought of a great idea. He thought, well, if there are aliens, perhaps they can hear us and we can hear them. Again, this was the time before flight, when people didn't know that if you go way up above in the atmosphere, air gets thinner and thinner until there's no more air. And between us and the moon, there's basically no air whatsoever. And as you well know, sound travels through a medium. For example, in this case, my words are traveling to your ears by vibrating the air. If there was no air in this room, I would be talking to myself because no, it wouldn't make any noise, any sound. Okay, but Jeremiah didn't know that. He was sure that with a microphone big enough, we could hear the aliens living on the moon. And so he set about to do the unthinkable, build the biggest microphone ever invented. And he searched everywhere for the best way to do this. He hired experts and scientists of all walks of life. And he tried to create the most advanced things. Some were extremely expensive, others were very much useless, and other ones were of very little use. Jeremiah was about to give up. He had spent a fortune already trying to create his gigantic microphone, but couldn't have couldn't come up with any good ideas. Until one day he went to sit in the park and he was pondering about the many experts' recommendations and plans, none of whom had worked to create the biggest microphone to listen to the aliens in the moon, when he came across a kid, a 6-year-old kid, in fact, who said, "Hello, mister. Are you sad?" said the kid. "Huh?" said Jeremiah, who was deeply entrenched in thought. "What? Sad? No, I'm not sad. What would you say that, kid?" "Oh, you just seem to be worried about something," said the kid. "Well, yes, I am, but it's a grown-up thing. I'd love to help, mister." "I'm sorry, little boy. I know that you would, but I have reached out to the farthest places in this world. I have contacted experts, and it's simply not possible to create what I want to do." "What is it that you want to do?" "I want to create the biggest microphone on Earth that could listen to the aliens from the moon. And I have spent a lot of my fortune trying to develop this technology, and nothing has worked. Ah, but what a fool I am, talking to a 6-year-old now. Anyways, this is how low I have reached, said Jeremiah. Well, I think I have your solution, said the 6-year-old kid. Run, run, go to your mama now. Bye bye. But I think I have the solution, said again the kid. Look, kid, no offense, but I've talked to lords, to scientists, to professors in Cambridge and Oxford and other prestigious universities. I've consulted with even oracles, and nobody has proven to have the appropriate solution. Well, let me know if you ever want to find out what my solution is. Goodbye, said the kid, and he left. And Jeremiah laughed and thought, the spirit of the kids, so creative. Anyways, that day passed without much event after the encounter at the park. And a few years passed when Jeremiah had finally given up on his wish to create an appropriate microphone that was big enough to listen to the aliens. Approximately 5 years passed by then. And he had lost much of his fortune. In fact, he had to sell some of his assets to pay the debts because he had not succeeded in creating a microphone that would reach out into the moon. One day, Jeremiah was meeting with some merchants at the local market, and one of the merchants said, "Well, Mr. Jeremiah, I'll tell you what, I'll buy your fruits from your plantation to sell at the market, but only if they're really delicious fruits." And Jeremiah said, "These are the best fruits you've ever had. They will sell great at your market stand." "Well, there's a test that will settle this," said the market guy. "I will call my son. He will taste your fruits, and if your trees produce the sweetest apples like you said, then we're in business together." "You have yourself a deal," said Jeremiah. "I'll meet you here tomorrow with a basket of my finest apples." Of course, Jeremiah needed to make money because he had incurred a lot of debt trying to come up with this invention that never worked. Well, the next day he came to the market with a bushel full of apples, and the market said, "Oh, hey, Alex, come here, my son, taste one of these apples." Alex was now 11 years old, but guess what? It was the same kid that Jeremiah had met 5 years early when Alex was 6 at the park. And the kid had grown a lot and changed, so Jeremiah didn't recognize him. But Jeremiah had not grown and changed much. Adults don't change that as quickly as kids. And so the kid recognized Jeremiah immediately. And when he saw him, he gave him a big smile and said, "So, mister, did you ever get to build your huge microphone?" "How did you know about this? That was 5 years ago." "Oh, I was the kid that saw you at the park. Are you still interested in my solution?" "Oh, well, I guess it can hurt now. I've already given up on the project." "Well, it's quite simple, actually. Me and my friends used to play at the old defense wall from the old city. You know, the one that's 10 minutes walk that way, that direction." Yes, of course, everybody in town knows it." "Well, there are old cannons in there, and I remember one time that my friend and I put our ear in the hole at the end of the cannon, and the cannon was like a huge microphone that we could hear birds, but we couldn't see them until my friend realized what was going on. We were seeing birds that were hearing birds that were miles and miles away. And there is your solution. You need to use a cannon. Just build a big one." Oh, Jeremiah was flew. He was amazed. He could not believe it. And so, with the little fortune he had, he ordered the biggest cannon ever to be built. and iron from different places was shipped to the town, and lots of coal to melt the iron. And after a year, the local um, smith, metal, metals, I think it's metalsmith, I don't know the name, the local guy that uh, can mold things in metal.
Okay.
That's why I want to talk to you in Spanish, but I have the exact word in Spanish for this, but I don't know it in English. But anyways, I digress. Um, Finally unveiled the biggest cannon ever. Everybody was amazed. And so Jeremiah made a huge announcement, called everybody in town and some people from out of town too. A few scientists even came from a different country to the great uh, research where he would listen for the first time to what the aliens on the moon had to say. And so, when everybody had gathered together, he said a small speech and put his ear inside of the hole. And guess what he heard?
What?
Nothing. Jeremiah was a little sweaty, a little uncomfortable. He thought, maybe they're sleeping right now. I'll check back in a few minutes. And so he did. And this time, guess what he heard?
What?
Still nothing. And so Jeremiah thought, well, they're aliens. Perhaps they sleep at this time for more hours. We're going to try tomorrow morning. Everybody was like, boo, boo, what's going on here? I came here for nothing, blah, blah, blah. But a couple of people returned the next day in the morning. And so Jeremiah pointed the cannon at the moon, put his ear, and listened attentively. And guess what he heard?
What?
Absolutely nothing. And so Jeremiah, in a bout of frustration, hit the cannon side. The cannon is mounted in a thing that could move around so that he could, and it was perfectly balanced, so it was easy to move, so that he could aim at the moon. So he hit the cannon, and the cannon started spinning and spinning and spinning. And he was so mad and so upset. He had spent his whole life for nothing. And the kid, Alex, the kid that had met Jeremiah at 6 years old and that later had told him the idea that he did not want to listen, thought, interesting thing here. Do you mind if I try putting my ear to it? I don't mind, kid. This piece of trash doesn't work. And he put his ear towards the cannon that was now pointed at the neighboring island. It was an island that was a few miles away. And guess what he heard?
What?
He heard the voices of the people of the island that was a couple of miles away. He heard them clearly. And he said, Jeremiah, Mr. Jeremiah, I can hear something. And Jeremiah put his ear down to the microphone cannon. And he also heard it loud and clear. He could hear the voices of the people that were in the other island. And then Jeremiah had a great idea. People of the town, gather around, said, I have an announcement to make. And everybody started like, boo, you've had an announcement for the last 5 years. Your announcements are nothing. Boo. That's not what I'm trying to say. Listen up. I will build you a communication system so that nobody else has to get on a boat and row for 3 hours to communicate with our neighboring island. I will provide the island with instantaneous communications. And everybody was like, oh, okay. And so he sold all of his possessions, what little he had left, and he ordered another of these cannons built. And when it was done, he had it shipped to the other island. And then he tested it. He agreed that there would be somebody at the other island with his ear pointing towards, with his cannon pointing towards him and his ear at the cannon. And he said, Ahoy, my friend from the other island. I must tell you that there's fine food in here for you if you want to join me tonight. And then he said, what say you? And he put his ear towards the cannon. And the other guy was so happy that he could hear Jeremiah that started screaming and jumping. But of course, nobody could hear him except for Jeremiah, who had his ear towards the cannon, in the end of the cannon. And he said, I could hear him. I could hear Jeremiah from the other side. Yes, yes, I'm going to dinner with you. So everybody from the other island was so excited. And they all got in boats to come to Jeremiah to see if it was true because they thought it was a trick. And then Jeremiah said to the people on his island, I have spoken with my friend from our neighboring island and he will join me for dinner tonight. And everybody was like, is it true? Is it true? And so everybody waited in the shore to see if his friend would come. And sure indeed, his friend came and they had dinner in front of everybody. And then everybody in the island started testing the system and Jeremiah charged a little bit of money for the use of his invention, the microphone that looked like a cannon. And he became one of the richest men in all town and made life a lot easier for everybody because now both islands got communication. And that's the story of the cannon that's shaped like a microphone. Or was it the microphone that's shaped like a cannon?
No, it was the cannon that was shaped like a microphone with a hole in it for the balls to go and to explode.
Yes. The end.
Yay! Best story ever.
Yes. I love you.
I love you.
Good night.